All right, so in the last video, we talked about this concept of haploid versus diploid. So I'll quickly recap that just for you and your reference. When we talk about haploid chromosomes, we're talking about a single variation or a single copy of each chromosome. So the chromosomes 1 to 23 in our bodies, we're only looking at one side of them. That's really, really important when we talk about haploid, to think about one variation of the chromosome. Whereas when we talk about diploid, we're looking actually at the two variations of the same chromosomes, what we would normally see in each of your cells. So, your skin cells, hair cells, things like that would all contain diploid chromosomes. The only time we ever talk about haploid chromosomes is during sexual reproduction, and that's going to be really, really important for the next slide. So haploid means one copy of a chromosome, or one side, or one variation of a chromosome. Diploid means two variations of the same chromosome, so two of chromosome 1. And when we look at diploid, it's one from mum, one from dad's side that you've inherited. Like I said, the purpose of this is for sexual reproduction. So what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to have offspring have an equal proportion of their genetic information come from each parent. And they need to have essentially the same amount overall, or 100% of the DNA. So they need to take 50% from each parent, not have 100% come from mum and 100% come from dad. Otherwise, their gene pool would be much, much bigger. Their DNA would be much, much bigger as well. And they'd essentially have 4 copies or 4 variations of chromosomes. So what happens is during sexual reproduction, we undergo a different type of cellular division called meiosis. So meiosis is pretty much, think of it as a similar process to mitosis, with the key difference being that in the second stage of meiosis, there is no DNA replication. And so what happens is we end up with daughter cells that will eventually only have half the genetic material. There's a couple of other key distinctions with meiosis in terms of how the chromosomes form and align and move around and stuff like that to increase genetic variability, which we will also talk about. So what happens is we have just a normal cell, or a cell that is going to undergo meiosis, so a sex cell, and what tends to happen there is we get the DNA replicating in interphase as per normal. But we also undergo a process of crossing over, which we don't actually see in mitosis. And so what you can see on that first set of images is you can start to see that the chromosomes have a dark and a light blue. And so what happens in crossing over is it's just a transfer of information. So the chromosome 1 actually might not only just be dad's side of the chromosome now, it might have a portion of it that it comes from mum's side. So you can see there's variations in the chromosome. Meiosis as well, in the first instance, goes through the same steps as mitosis, where we have prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. And so we can see after meiosis 1, we get pretty much something that is almost the same as what we would end up with in mitosis. The only difference in meiosis 1 and mitosis is really we have that concept of crossing over, where we get some genetic variability in what the chromosomes look like in the two daughter cells. In meiosis 2, there is no interphase. So immediately after meiosis 1 is completed, we undergo another replication cycle. Sorry, not another replication cycle, another meiosis cycle. So we have prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase, where we get the alignment against the spindle fibers, the starting to be pulled apart at the centromere, things like that. All of that stuff happens as it does in mitosis. However, what you can see at the end of telophase 2 in meiosis 2 is because there was no secondary DNA replication, we now have each of those 4 daughter cells containing only 50% of genetic material. So in essence, not 2 copies of each chromosome, only 1 copy of each chromosome. So yes, they still have all of the information, but only 1 variation of it. And it is a little bit mixed up. All right, so go through, read all this, make your notes, but essentially much the same as mitosis. However, we have some key processes that are discussed to increase that genetic variability.